And if you look at verse 1 through 6, he takes 5 of his brothers, he brings them to Pharaoh. And by the way, we do know that the Egyptians did not like shepherds too much. I think that's pointed out somewhere in here, maybe it's in the previous chapter. And how he asks them if they can take care of his flocks, though. If you look at verse 6, it says, "The land of Egypt is before you, says Pharaoh. Settle your father and your brothers in the best of the land. Let them settle in the land of Goshen. If you know any able men among them, put them in charge of my livestock." Here now, interestingly, Jacob's sons participate in the economy of a pagan empire. Let's make a little application there. Because we have among us, we always have had radical Christians who claim what about their participation in secular life and government? That if the government is not run according to the Bible, it's illegitimate. And at the time of the Reformation, you had the Anabaptists and other radical Christians who thought it was a sin for a Christian to serve in the military, to be a police officer, to be a magistrate in the secular government of the Holy Roman Empire, and serve Charles V, unless it can be run according to the Christian gospel. What does the Augsburg Confession say about that? There's a whole article on that. Basically says, if I may paraphrase it, that it's no sin for Christians to serve in the military, etc., etc. And they condemn those. And remember, the Augsburg Confession was being presented not to the Pope. It was being presented to Emperor Charles V, a secular ruler of the Holy Roman Empire. And the purpose, while certainly was theological, as I mentioned earlier, one of the key purposes of the Augsburg Confession was political. Because since the year 390 AD or so, approximately there, the Holy Roman Emperor Theodosius, who had become a Christian, passed an edict in the Holy Roman Empire that no one shall be recognized as a faithful citizen who does not accept the Nicene Creed. And if you did not accept the Nicene Creed, you were not just a heretic to be thrown out of the church, you would be driven out of the empire and not given protection by the Holy Roman Empire. And that's why the Protestants, notice I didn't call them Lutherans yet. I thought on me teaching the Augsburg Confession, they were Protestants at that point still. Protesting Catholics. Protesting what? Medieval superstitions and abuses which had crept in over the last 600 or 700 years into the church. They were protesting those things. And so they had to assure the Holy Roman Empire they were not heretics, not traitors of the state, and so they defend their faithfulness to the Nicene Creed. And that's why they have this article, I forget which one it is now, where they defend the fact that we believe that Christians can in good conscience serve the state and can serve as judges and pass judgment, here's an interesting phrase, according to imperial law. Think of it. According to imperial law. Now that's a big mouthful there. They're not claiming that you have to only pass laws and judgments according to the Bible, because you must separate church and state. So I'm sure there were certain laws that they had to judge and pass according to the laws of imperial state, which may not always have agreed necessarily with the Bible taught, I guess. I don't know. But that's what they defend. So here we have Joseph's brothers willing to serve, and you've got this already encapsulated here kind of in a germinal form that's developed much later in the New Testament. Here they are going to serve a pagan empire, the Egyptian Pharaoh, refuses. Where are my deacons? Let's get new things here. This can't cost us that much. What's that saying here? Forgot my train of thought. That's like the early church service. Did you hear what happened there? The organ, if you haven't contributed to it, please do. There's a couple pedals that start bouncing. That's what happened to Crystal in the early service. The one pedal started bouncing like a basketball. It wouldn't stop. And that's why she was trying to get it to stop. So anyway, what was my point again? Yes. Yes, so I forgot the exact point I was going with that, but how Joseph's brothers now, the pagan Egyptian Pharaoh, that's what I was talking about, who viewed himself as a god. And the Joseph's brothers do not stand up and say, we will not serve a pagan god like this. They're going to serve because that's what the government was like. Which raises interesting points. For us, it's not such a serious matter in the United States, but there have been Christians in other cultures. How about communist countries? What if you lived in China today, and you were a Christian, and they permitted you, which they usually don't, but let's, for the sake of the argument, permitted you to serve in secular offices? Could you do it? That raises interesting questions, doesn't it? At which point do you say, I can't serve the government? Well, Joseph's brothers here, they apparently served in good conscience under this pagan god, Pharaoh, in a sense, because the laws were basically natural law. You find it in most governments. That's enough said on that verse. It's an important verse. Verse 7. Then Joseph brought in Jacob his father and stood him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. I want to comment on that. Here Jacob blesses a pagan ruler. He doesn't go in and lecture him that he believes in a false god, namely himself. Isn't that kind of interesting? And Jacob, in a certain sense, he does mention his faith, but he doesn't curse Pharaoh. St. Paul later on, years later, developed it. If you turn to 1 Timothy 2, verse 1. 1 Timothy 2:1, Paul, as he gives instructions to these young pastor Timothy of how to run the church, what does he say that they should be sure to do as the church? Now, some of you haven't already. First of all, then, I urge that entreaties and prayers, petitions and thanksgivings be made on behalf of all men, for kings, and for all who are in authority, that we may lead a tranquil and peaceful life in all godliness and dignity. Paul there encourages the church to raise up prayers for Barack Obama. Whether you're Democrat or Republican, you pray for him. Is that right? And Romans 13, Paul develops that also in a more general way, writing to a congregation living right in the heart of the pagan Roman Empire. Let every soul be subject to the higher powers. There is no power except that which has been ordained by God. When only do you disobey a government? When only do you disobey a government? We can get that out of Paul's words to Romans 13 there. He says the government's business is to punish wrongdoers and reward good doers. Good doers? What's that? Philanthropists. To reward good people, okay? When a government no longer does that and starts persecuting honest, upright people and rewarding evil, wicked people, then we have a conscience problem here. I've gone through this maybe with you before, which raises interesting questions, for example, about in Chicago, Illinois in the 1930s, Al Capone, basically, I just saw that movie the other day, Al Capone was ruling Chicago, bought off all the judges and magistrates and police officers. Was he the legitimate governor in Chicago? No, he wasn't. The citizens did not owe him any obedience. How about in the Russian government? When the Bolsheviks took over and killed the Tsar, he wasn't the best ruler, we know that. But he was okay. But the Bolsheviks basically murdered his entire family, you know that story. Did the Russians have a right to throw off the communist government? Well, how about the United States in our revolution? Did we have the right to throw off the authority of the King of England? There was debate on that in our country. Some thought, no, you must obey those in authority. Others said the King of England is no longer a legitimate ruler on the colonies because he is not defending us. He is basically stealing from us. He is not a legitimate king. And they defended the revolution. I don't know where you stand on that. It's a moot point because now we're happy where we are. So this chapter, this verse, I think raises a lot of interesting points here. How Joseph's brothers not only serve a pagan government, Jacob himself comes in, and what does it say? It says he blessed Pharaoh. Blessed Pharaoh. Let's see, what's the Hebrew word? That's what verse is it? Verse 7. Probably he bent the knee before him. Yeah, he blessed him. Bent the knee before him. It's a euphemism for blessing. You stand before someone, give him honor and blessing. So he does this to a pagan emperor. If he can do that, what kind of honor and respect should we be showing towards our government? By the way, our Constitution does give us the right, doesn't it, to speak